Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism. Well, today I'm going to talk a little bit about a new series I want to introduce to my channel, which is called Faces of the Occult. And in Faces of the Occult, what I'm going to do periodically is just talk about one particular person who has excelled in the area of occultism. I think it's important to look at the past in order to look at where does our information come from, and possibly even offer an exemplar of what is possible. What type of skills can we acquire? It's a kind of a commentary on the unlimited potential of the human race. So I'm going to introduce that today. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about Franz Bardon. So if anyone has not heard of Franz Bardon, Franz was a Czech magician that lived in the early part of the 20th century, and he died, I want to say, 1959, if I'm not mistaken. Mr. Bardon, he was a proponent of Hermeticism, and Hermeticism is a branch of occultism that comes from the Egyptians, like thousands of years ago. So we're talking about at least before, in the Common Era, before the Common Era. So it's been around a long time. We have certain texts that have survived that long to kind of illustrate, some of those principles. We have the, I think it was the Emerald Tablet, which mentioned the famous occult saying, "As above, so below," that sort of thing. So anyway, I don't want to get too far into Hermeticism. That would be for another video. But kind of talking a little bit more about Franz Bardon. So Franz Bardon, he had a very ordinary upbringing, very average childhood. However, at the age of 16, he had a complete personality change. Up until that point, he was working, even as a teen. He was a repairman for sewing machines, of all things. And at 16, he had basically a psychic change in his mind. He went and had the insight to go and study occultism. And he studied Raja Yoga, he studied Tibetan Buddhism, and various other things. Now, many speculate that it was such an abrupt change in personality and behavior. Some occultists believe that he was subject to the walk-in phenomena, where some type of intelligence actually enters the body of someone, and all of a sudden there's like this switch, and it's like a different person. So some claim that he's a walk-in. Who knows? But anyway, back to my story. So, fast forward, he's studying all these different things, and a little bit of history too, that Franz Bardon was put into a Nazi concentration camp during World War II. He wasn't Jewish or anything like that, but the Nazis would put people, other populations that they didn't approve of, homosexuals, other people. Well, his crime was that it was observed and known that he was an occultist. So that's what he did in order to earn his right to get into a concentration camp. So he was there for 3.5 years, and of course it was very hard for him. He was eventually, I believe, released. I don't think he escaped. And as time went on, he went and he penned his novels, which I'm going to mention, and I'll put the links at the bottom in the description. But back then, occultism was something that was still kind of looked upon with suspicion. Many people were arrested. In fact, in his own country, in the Czech Republic, he was eventually arrested, put in jail, and he died in jail of pancreatitis. So that's a little bit about his life. He is, like I said, well respected and well regarded among many occultists. But back to his books. So the first book that he wrote, which was called Initiation into Hermetics, and this is my favorite book because what it is, it's light on theory, but heavy on exercises. He offers spiritual exercises from the novice to the adept. And the exercises are going to revolve around thought control, meditation, breath control, into more advanced things like clairvoyance, telepathy, interacting with the elements, that sort of thing. I really like it. It's probably one of his most popular books. Really like it. Can't say that enough. Next book, which is the magical practice of magical evocation. So that book is also very good. It is the second in the series. So these are all sequential. These are all workbooks in a way. You start from the initiation into Hermetics, into the practice of magical evocation, and then there's a third one, but you're supposed to start from the first book and then go through the other ones. And the practice of magical evocation, it's a really good book to evoke planetary spirits, also to evoke spirits associated with astrological signs. There are over 300 different sigils that are in the book that the student could work with. And back then, and people still do it today, even though they're different methods. His method of gathering these sigils was to basically go into meditation and invoke these particular spirits into his body, and then allowing them to take over his body and his hand to actually draw these sigils out. And if you know a little bit about the history of this time period, is that spiritualism was still around. So in spiritualism, they did a lot of automatic writing, communication with spirits, and that sort of thing. So that was still kind of lingering in that part of the world after it spread, from America. So the next book, which is called The Key to the True Kabbalah. Now, I myself do not have this book. I haven't worked the exercises. Just by doing a little bit of research, I know that there are mixed reviews about it. Some people say that is not the true Kabbalah because they say that his correspondences are unusual and different and kind of messed up from traditional Kabbalah. So I can't really comment too much on that, but just to let you know that is the third book in the series, and that if you wanted to go through all three as kind of a course of spiritual progression and occult development, then that's your three that you need to go through with him. And that's another reason why he's well known, is no one up to this point in history has actually went ahead and organized something like that. So you have probably about nearly 1,000 pages of work that the student can do if they get all three books. But that's not his only books. So he has one that's called Roboto the Magician. Roboto was Franz Bardon's name when he was younger. He was actually an illusionist and did some stage magic. So he was very much familiar with magic in the illusory sense. And the book is kind of some letters between he and his personal assistant. I believe that the personal assistant is actually the one that wrote it, and that it's almost like a somewhat fictionalized. It's like there are true elements to it. Some of the events are true, but it's very much exaggerated. But a lot of people like it, and it's supposedly a good book. So if you're interested in that, something a little bit lighter than some of his other three, then I would recommend that. And again, I'll put that in the description link. I guess also they talk about in that book his kind of escape from Germany, They talk about his supposedly some magical wars that he went against other magicians as part of this Black Lodge in Germany. And supposedly that there were really, Hitler had organized occult groups working against the Allies. So that could also be true as well. As far as my assessment's concerned, I think that it would take that it's definitely worthy of your time. Be patient with it if you decide to go through all of his books and go through them the way that he designed them. Just take your time and be patient with yourself. And I've went through a lot of the exercises, and I could say that, they definitely have helped me a lot. In any case, this is Mark Henry. Thank you very much. Please subscribe and like, and I will put the books that listed the links in the description. Have a good weekend.